Need a search engine optimization SEO services? Then get in touch with our professional and friendly team to learn more about our range of custom and tailored services designed to suit your exact needs. Every one of our professionals have acquired years of experience, which ensures you get the very best. Our experienced staff is waiting to hear from you and to answer any specific questions that you may have on how we can meet your needs. Just ask for a consultation and let us prove our commitment to you as we promise to maintain the highest level of quality and commitment. Your satisfaction is our prime concern. So please, don't hesitate to get in contact with us and let us show you all the great options we have.
And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network at coalitionradionetwork.com. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course, the mothership at coalitionradionetwork.com and our legacy site, coalitionradio.us. Well, it was an intriguing day here in La Prove, the Naked City, the city of 1,000 stories. I personally felt privileged to attend, I think, what was one of the most intriguing, if not one of the more spectacular news conferences held in recent Providence history. And of course, it occurred at 11 o'clock this morning on the footsteps, if you will, approaching our State House. Some refer to it as the State House. I always harken back to Rudy Cheeks, of Philippe and Jorge, one of the great comic minds currently in Rhode Island independent media, really one of the godfathers of independent media, who often refers to that building as Halitosis Hall. Well, there was great oratory, and there was some not so great oratory and responses today. But it is my privilege, for the very first time on Alone, she's appeared a couple of times now on our panel show called Pump Up the Volume, which is run by Dr. Luis Daniel Munoz, here on Tuesday nights at 7:30. But it is my privilege for the very first time to have a conversation directly with Rhode Island State Representative Anastasia Williams. Representative Williams, thank you so much for joining us tonight. What is clearly perhaps one of the most hectic moments in recent Rhode Island history.
Oh, yes, the world history.
It's astonishing what's coming down. I'm going to quote you. You've used this term, I think, a couple times. Clearly in Rhode Island, the chickens have come home to roost on levels that I don't think even folks who are activists would ever have thought possible at one moment of time. It was astonishing to watch. It was a tribute to you that you had most of the leadership of the state of Rhode Island out there on the steps of the Capitol building today. And they essentially, and I say this politely, had to listen to a list of grievances, points, well-documented issues that have challenged the minority community in this state for, well, I think generations. And I say minority now because really Rhode Island is a minority-majority state. And I think today represented to a certain degree the beginnings of the changing of the guard. Because at this point in time, it's my personal opinion, what do the kids say, IMHO, in my humble opinion, that the Speaker, his minions, folks who call themselves Democrats, folks who are progressive Democrats, can no longer hide behind talking groups and study panels and held for consideration anymore. I think after your speech today, I think they've been successfully put on notice that it is time for material change, and to that I congratulate you sincerely. It was really a remarkable morning. What are your thoughts now that you've had a few hours to sort of decompress and assess the situation?
Thank you, Pat. First and foremost, I haven't had the time to decompress. I am so pumped up right now from this morning. I'm still trying to convince myself that John DePietro is not from another planet. So with that alone, I think that I don't think, and as much as I haven't looked back and thought about things, because I haven't used the time to decompress yet, I believe it was a success in the sense that I believe people not only listened to what I had to say, but many heard what I had to say. And several people right there after it was all done and over came up to me and they said, I felt what you was presenting. Some folks are sincere. When you're accustomed of a certain thing being a certain way, you're okay. You don't believe that there's anything wrong outside of your particular environment. And then there are those that know that it goes beyond that and they want to keep it, you know, keep it and keep people in denial of it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I was happy to be able to, and that was a short list, but I was thinking, remember I had everybody move into the shade earlier? I was like, there's no way I would be able to be getting no vitamin D3 and last more than 10 minutes in it. So when they were like, no, well, we can't move because I said, honey, you can't tell me that we cannot find an extension cord in that building over there. I'll give you all 5 minutes. And they resolved that matter, as you saw. Yep. But I think it was thus far that what I can remember and recall, it was a moment of truth.
I would agree completely. I think in the past, folks have talked about these issues in a very general sense. I think what was important about today, not only in getting folks to, in a sense, stand up and fess up, if you will, but I think it was very important to put down to paper exactly what needed to change. And it's clear that because of your provocative speech and also your ability to summon forth folks who are of the younger generation, and you were able to, in a sense, how can I put this, manage what could have been disintegrated into a shouting game on a couple of occasions, which I think would have played to the strength of your opponents very quickly. The entire attempt by one, as you mentioned, radio personality to try to get you to publicly state that you supported violence was perhaps one of the most disingenuous things, and I'm being polite here, that I've seen at a public rally at any time soon. Because I'm not aware of any time, regardless of whether you agree with your politics or not, that you've attempted to use your public persona, your position within the community and or the state as a leader to ever encourage illegality, to ever encourage violence, to ever encourage the destruction of property. I'm not aware of any time that you've ever done that in your entire political career. So to try and prompt that and to turn the meeting into some type of circus, and your ability to overcome that so quickly, and then when the young folks who are clearly very frustrated, and I don't blame them. They're very, very frustrated. There's a lot of anger simmering underneath, if you will, just beneath the surface. And when that started to erupt, your ability to then get them to present, I think what you achieved today with the younger folks, just as a sidelight almost, was the notion that clear, concise political thought presented in a public format in a non-accusatory but at the same time factual manner is a political act that is worthy of consideration. And when they have to sit there, as they did, and have to listen to it, and there were a couple people there who clearly didn't want to be there, but clearly knew they had to be there to put them on the point, to put them on point and to put them on notice, and to have young people deliver in a very provocative but polite and I think very professional manner their grievances was also a remarkable moment that I think will not go unnoticed, and I think will resonate with the younger generation. So the win occurred on multiple levels today, and I think it sets the stage for a very powerful, peaceful rally tomorrow afternoon. I think it clearly sets the stage for that. So I'm just, I want to go through with you some of the points that you made, but I just feel like the optics in and of itself are worthy of absorbing and commenting on. Was there a particular highlight for you during this? And you were in a zone. When you do these things, you're in a zone for an hour and a half. But is there anything that strikes you as a particularly powerful moment?
When the young lady, Amanda, succumbed to my words was a moment for me, because I wasn't certain what her entire reaction was going to be, but I wasn't willing to give up either, because the frustration that her and her other friends were demonstrating, I am very familiar with that, because it's a frustration that I encounter inside of that chamber, and I have expressed repeatedly for years, but it falls on deaf ears because, again, nobody is walking in our shoes. People have their eyes wide shut, and because their upbringing, whether it was a good one or a bad one, is different than ours, they don't want to believe that it's a reality for us on a daily basis, but it is. So the moment for me was when I tapped her and I'm like, come on, baby girl, come on, bring it down so that they will hear what you say, opposed to take your anger and frustration and make that the highlight of the entire press conference. Because let's be real, let's be honest here. The media is one of the, if not the most powerful entity in the world. They can make an innocent person be as guilty as the day is long, and make a guilty person as innocent. So realistically, they could have, I haven't seen any of the news reels, anything. I have not gone back and checked anything just yet. But for me, she listened and heard and felt me. And that was a moment for me. For the entire day, that was a moment for me.
Right.
In fact, I just left her and a few of her crew. So, it's a bond that has happened.
Mm-hmm. Do you predict a future in some level of politics for that young lady, now that you've kind of shown her how successful you can be by being provocative yet on point?
I don't know if that may be a direction that she's going to, but she said to me she is interested in learning. And by virtue of having an open mind, a willing heart to listen, learn, and make your own decision, that tells me there is something headed in your way that is going to be so fabulous, so magnificent, that she's going to be deserving of.
And they didn't come up front, but there were two other young ladies off to the left from me facing you, who also brought up some rather pointed and again on target remarks about the inaction of the legislature. I felt it interesting that the conventional media there did not take the opportunity to put legislative management, if you will, on notice because of their failure to convene at any meaningful level. And that play, from my perspective, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, certainly, but from my perspective, that plays into that sort of that media partnership with leadership in this state. And what I mean by that is that I feel that far too much of the conventional media is worried about future access to politicians than they are sometimes about asking you the really pointed, hard questions. I mean, they're afraid of the disconnect that occurs and can occur when you put people in power on the spot. And I personally feel that's very unfortunate. That's one of the leading cause for some of the problems that we have in this state. But what are your thoughts?
I agree with you. One of the obvious signs for me today was that they did not understand the process or the powers that be. Mm-hmm. So their frustration has taken over everything. And they're assuming, they're going on a lot of assumption. You know, they have it in for the governor in the sense that they believe, and it was rightfully so, that the Governor Gina Raimondo, added fuel to the existing fire by adding this curfew, because here again, a decision was made without really thinking about the consequences of the people that curfew is going to affect. One being, there are many people who work the second and third shift that mm-hmm. does not have transportation, and the public transportation is limited to how many people can be on the bus at one particular time. So therefore, some are close enough to their place of employment that they are walking. So after the curfew, whether you're going to, or coming from, if a police officer finds you on the street after this curfew that the governor has put on, they don't want to hear that you're going or coming from work. They're like, you're in violation. Come on, get it, you know. So that was one of the frustration that they presented to me today. And I said, you know, it's unfair. The governor doesn't want to listen, far less hear what we have to say. It's always for us, but without us. And at the end of the day, it's not working. But she don't give a fat rat's behind if it works or not for us, because she's got the hookup from the floor up, period.
You know, just to to emphasize your point, I think I mentioned to you the first time you were on the air, you may not remember this, but I just put 2 kids through school, and I've worked 3 and 4 jobs at a time. One of my jobs for about 2 or 3 years was driving. I was a Lyft driver, and I did a lot of driving in the West End, the South End, the North End of Providence. And you quickly understand 2 important issues with respect to ordinary folks' ordinary life with regard to those communities. Number one, that RIPTA, or the RIPTA as we say in Rhode Island, it terribly underserves those communities, particularly at night, which is ironic because many of the folks in those communities are doing the very jobs that later on that afternoon, Governor Raimondo lauded. We're talking about healthcare, CNAs, nursing assistants, folks who work in a variety of long-term medical facilities, as well as Rhode Island Hospital, who have to show up for work at 11 o'clock at night, very often the second job they've worked that day. Now, under normal circumstances, they would be forced to grotesquely overpay for things like Lyft and Uber, very often using an hour or 2's salary simply to get back and forth to work, because even under ordinary circumstances, they're very poorly served by mass transportation. And that's what we talk about, how expensive it is to be amongst the working poor in this state. It's expensive to be poor here. There are a lot of extra costs that folks who have somehow made that jump up into the next level, sometimes through no effort of their own, don't have to undergo those costs. So now all of a sudden, to effectively criminalize, if you will, the behavior of getting to work seems to be just incredibly cruel. I mean, that's the most polite way I can put it, Representative. It's just incredibly cruel.
It's right on point, Pat. It's right on point. It's right on point. She continues to fail over and over and over. She's surrounded by individuals that are clueless of what the other cultures that make this diverse state the greatness that it is. Mm-hmm. And while I'm not diminishing their concerns and their interests and their power, the bottom line here is we're all in this. We are all in this. And she chooses it to be, when she says we are, she's talking about those folks that look like her, that are in that circle like her, that can understand her, that she has their most interest of, period. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. And resources is not coming quickly and in the amounts for us as she has made it available for her and her folks.
Right.
And I got the paper to prove it, so she can go ahead and try to deny it, just like she was. You and I worked together on this. You and I worked together on that. You and I, she was placating like, yeah, all right. She can placate on all she wanna.
One of the points you made today that you brought to the fore was a discussion of the Police Bill of Rights. I just want to point out something you may or may not, because it's been so hectic on a local. Nationally today, Ayanna Pressley, who is the young congresswoman from the Boston area, and who represents obviously a progressive Democratic bent politically, and Justin Amash, who is the sole libertarian. I'm a libertarian, to clear that up. I'm a libertarian. The sole libertarian congressman in the United States House of Representatives have introduced some very intriguing legislation. It's a House bill to end qualified immunity for police officers. What does that mean? Well, as part of the Civil Rights Act of 1871, Congress allowed individuals to sue state and local officials, including police officers who violate their rights. Now, starting in 1967, an activist Supreme Court started gutting that and introducing all sorts of protections for folks in blue. That percentage, and I'm not going to play that game, but let's just say that percentage who engaged in personal abuses of their power, sometimes on a civil level, sometimes on a physical level. The extreme of which, of course, we saw this past week in Minnesota, and as we've seen in Staten Island, and as we've seen in Baltimore, and as we've seen in Chicago, and as we've seen everywhere. And so on a federal level, there is movement afoot from some very powerful people to all of a sudden take law enforcement and put them on the same level as us. How important is it that same thing to have happen here in Rhode Island? How much accountability will be put in place if, in fact, police officers are accountable in a court of law and in a court of civil law for their behavior?
First of all, I think that that's going to be a huge fight. Rhode Island has been covering, condoning, looking the other way, sweeping under the rug things that has happened to many of our law enforcement officers, both on the municipal level and on the state police level. Now, they'll probably come after me for saying that, but it's the truth. Unfortunately, the law enforcement, the Policeman Bill of Rights protects them for doing all the ill things that they have been getting away with for years. Are they ready to change that? I would say yes, because there are a lot of genuine law enforcement officers, both on those levels that I mentioned, municipal and state, that have presented. They are very well aware of those jump out boys that utilize that badge to do the ills on the street. They're very well aware of them, and they don't want to be painted in the same light with the same brush as they are.
Right.
And, for those, I commend them. I appreciate them. But unfortunately, because of those bad apples, they're going to be perceived as perpetrators. So this may be a fight, but I think that the representation of the youth that's before us now, they ain't going away. And everybody is watching the action of every last police officer, be it state a municipal police officer, honey, they are on notice. So they may think that they're going to be able to continue to get away with something, but they're not. So what they should want to do is come to the table, take that antiquated blanket and work toward changing it for the betterment of everybody. Because it's a two-way street. It's not to say that the officer does not have the right to restrain any individual, because they may be unruly, off the hinge or whatever. But you have those that they get off on doing the ills that they do. They look forward to it. They provoke it. And then they create an illusion of what it wasn't actually. So things are going to change. And it's not going to take forever. It's going to change.
I wonder
Today,
if you
I think that they'll put on notice.
I wonder if you could explain for folks. I get the reference. I was fortunate enough to have on a couple of occasions folks from PRISM on. I've had folks from a variety of backgrounds and a variety of levels of involvement from the ACLU down throughout the community, including DARE on this show over the last few years. All, by the way, demonstrating a personal strength and a resilience that I think have, once given an opportunity to speak their case before the public, have really shown, and really, when people will open their eyes and understand what these different community groups are actually trying to accomplish, will walk away with a completely different understanding of what's really happening on the streets of Providence. But you use the term jump out boys. I understand what that is. Can you explain to folks what the jump out boy unit is, if you will?
Well, as I remember it to be, our individual officers, law enforcement officers, that they're often on prey, all day or in the evening, looking out, and they jump out at you. They come at you.
Right.
It's been for years. It's almost another term that is used. Those cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
We still have them. So they come out, they're individual officers that will drive around looking for something to do. And not something good either.
No, it's unfortunate. I again, in interviewing some of the kids, they're kids to me. I'm obviously older, but in interviewing some of these young people, what strikes me, and it's an experience that suburban America doesn't have to deal with every day. There is a presumed guilt by a certain percentage of law enforcement on young people merely because of the fact that they are outside and about. Hanging out would be the term that we used when we were growing up, in their communities. An activity which is, by the way, they are thoroughly rightful in doing so, but very often the excuse is either weed or the fact that they might be wearing something remotely similar to gang colors. All of that will prompt an unwanted invasion of their space, if you will, by a particularly aggressive law enforcement officer. Having to live with that, as so many people in your community do, what impact does that have on people over time when they're constantly being interrogated?
It's a way of life. It's a disruptive way of life. Oftentimes we are prepared for it. Sometimes we're not expecting it, and we react because of it. It's an everyday thing for a lot of us. It's an unfortunate situation. It's an unfortunate way of life that we encounter in our urban communities, day in and day out.
How many women of color do you know have had to have a conversation with their children, particularly if their children are young men, about how to behave in the face of an aggressive police action?
Every woman I know, every father I know has had the conversation and continues to have that conversation and how to react. Everybody has a different way of approaching that situation, because you need to be taught, be educated, and be ready for that particular situation when it happens, if it happens. I was standing in my living room, and my son had gone down the street to visit a friend. And on his way back, I just happened to be standing in the living room, and I could see him walking. I also saw a police squad car creeping up behind him very slowly. So I watched. And as he got to the corner to turn onto our street to get in the house, he got pulled over for absolutely no question whatsoever. Good thing I observed it. I opened up the door. I came out onto the porch, and he was starting to get aggressive verbally with my son. What I did that day that I don't normally do, I reached for my pocketbook before I opened up the door and took my badge out. And I went out onto the porch, down the stairs, and walked over to my son and showed it. And there was an apology that was extended to both my son and I. Mm-hmm. But with that apology came the excuse that they had gotten calls with regard to an individual walking the neighborhood in basketball shorts. So, because my son was walking in basketball shorts, and supposedly they got a call, mm-hmm. He was a perfect target in that moment. But had I not been in that living room looking out that door, and as much as I have taught my children, their dad has taught our children, the bottom line is, I know my son, he was going to stand up for his honor of not being a guilty person. He was going to challenge them because of the fact that he knows that he is somebody and he should not be treated as a person that's less than. Right. So I was happy that it didn't get a chance to escalate, because I zoomed out there and I had my badge. And when they saw my badge, it was like, oh, sorry, thank you. Excuses. But it happens all the time. But I think the tables have turned. The tables have turned. Mm-hmm. It used to be said back in the day, the revolution shall not be televised. But guess what? George Floyd's death was watched in the entire world, not the country. So we are watching. People are watching. So the revolution for me shall be televised. So they can go ahead and act a fool if they wanna, because they don't know who is watching them when they're acting up. So those bad habits may remain habits, but they're going to be very selective when, where, and to whom they put it on, execute it on, and how they behave. Period. There'll be change, a lot of change.
You know, today was fascinating. I don't know how often, and I don't spend a lot of time doing press conferences, but I knew I had to be there today. The presence of a strong undercurrent of independent media was there today. Bill Bartholomew was there, of course, filming and asked one of the more provocative questions. Our friends from, Steve Alquist was there today, and he put the speaker on the spot when he mentioned, in fact, that driver's licenses had been up for consideration for, I believe, 5 consecutive terms. Let me ask you a question. The driver's license issue. Why do you feel that people are just so passive-aggressive, so thoroughly upset about someone that they're not related to becoming a licensed driver in the state of Rhode Island, someone who's not part of their life, and in doing so becomes fully insured, and in doing so has to pass a driver's test, and in doing so, I would think just by simply getting that license, satisfy several practical needs for us all to be on the road safely? Why are people so obsessed about undocumented folks getting driver's licenses?
I think that it's a matter of control. Undocumented individuals have had driver's license for years until one of our Republican governors removed that opportunity, privilege from them, and now it created another additional problem for the state to have to deal with. But it's important for us to be able to support the immigrant undocumented community. Just like coronavirus is here, Corona is not going to go anywhere. Rona is here to stay. And so is every undocumented person that lives next door, up the street, down the block, wherever amongst us. They're not going anywhere. So rather than utilizing time to try to get them out, utilize the time to try to accommodate, because they also are a definite contributor to our economy. Many of these restaurants that the governor is so happy and in such a rush to open up and get the economy going, which rightfully so, I'm all for it. Who you think is cleaning up those dishes in the back? Mm-hmm. Who you think are some of those chefs in the back? Who are these dealerships that are there? Who you think are the ones that are washing those cars and doing the details on there? Mm-hmm. Who are in the back of those bakeries with those fine pastries and, lovely, lovely, lovely? Who are cleaning up those offices after everybody is gone? Including the State House, baby. Including our State House. Who is cleaning and taking out the trash in the emergency room, the hospitals? So please, they are doing the job that needs to be done, and they should be applauded and accommodated, because without them, those things would not be properly done, period. So give them the license. It's an opportunity. It's a plus. It keeps the road safe. It makes sure that everybody is, has the proper licenses, the insurance. If they take the risk and get into an accident, or if they get stopped, what is going to be the issue? We had an undocumented person, and they were driving a vehicle, so they're breaking the law. Honey, they was just wiping your mama's behind at the nursing home, and you haven't been there in the last 3 days. And the only conversation she had is that an undocumented person that was there. And guess what? Your mama loves that individual and appreciates that individual, but she can't get to work because she has to wonder if that moment is going to come when they are going to pull her over, or him, and say that they're breaking the law. We are breaking the law by not assisting any of them. They're here to stay. Just like Rona is here to stay, they're here to stay. So we better embrace that and get over it and help these people, because they're helping us. You know what? It would be really good for me to go ahead and check out some of these restaurants when they open up and see who's in the back room cleaning up. I would love to do a survey of that and see who their cleaners are. I bet you to be like, oh, no, lock the door. Here she comes. Yeah, baby. You to opening up and participating and contributing to the economy as best you can under the situation. But I know somebody that's helping you to get it done, and they ain't got a license to get there, so they have to take 3 or 4 buses at 3 or 4 hours earlier than they would have if they had a vehicle to drive with a legal driving license to get there.
Right.
So fully on them.
You and I are familiar
with
You and I are familiar with the term pipeline to prison. I don't know if a lot of folks in Rhode Island are. When you take civil laws and effectively create criminal actions out of their, out of an inability, if you will, to observe them simply because of life's pressures. These are victimless crimes. They aren't even crimes. They shouldn't be crimes. And yet we take innocent people who are simply trying to make a life for them and their families and put them in a position where, well, it confirmed all our beliefs. We knew they were criminals. We just had to make sure they were criminals. And that's really what it comes down to.
Right.
I'm fascinated, and I love your response to this. I'm a third generation American. All my grandparents came over to Ireland. Probably not a shock, right? Looking at me, all right? I got the map of Ireland on my face, right? So my grandparents, when they came over to the United States, simply had to make sure that when they got to Ellis Island, they had a name and they weren't visibly sick. So I find it breathtaking now that all of a sudden, 2 or 3 or 4 generations later, there are Americans who are saying, my grandparents did it the right way. Well, the right way then is exactly what we're doing now, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any right way for someone to want freedom and to want a life to improve themselves by hard work?
It is absolutely. And when they say my grandparents did it the right way, honey, grandparents back in the day had secrets, baby. So you might believe that they did it the right way, but that does not necessarily is the way that you want to believe it was. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, immigrants came over here and they worked hard and made what is now an American nightmare. They were successful in achieving the American dreams for their children and grandchildren and who are here now. So there's absolutely no excuse for us not to extend that opportunity for our sisters and brothers who have come over here looking and searching and wanting the same thing, period. I could understand if they're here perpetrating and, creating havoc and so forth. We got some folks that are born right here that need to be jacked up from the floor up 24/7. But instead, we give them passes. And then we have law-abiding immigrants here illegally, but doing the right thing, and they're being punished. It makes absolutely no sense. No sense. We have bad apples in every category, in every race, in every city and town, period. We are all human and we're looking for a better way of life. Don't deprive it. It should not be something like that where I'm going to pick and choose who can and who should and all that stuff. They are a productive person in society. Good for you. Come on. Are you doing what? Sure enough. Come on. Matter of fact, many individuals that I know that own businesses, some of the employees are immigrants. And what they have said to me, oh my God, Raul is the best work I've ever had. I asked if he has a sister or a brother to bring him on board too. So many folks are very happy with the work that these immigrants are doing. Unfortunately, many of those employers are not stepping up to the front and defending them because they too are concerned about the ramification coming from their own colleagues or their own communities for supporting and condoning this group. But they don't have a problem benefiting, though, at the end of the day, off of these groups.
Right. Now, it's difficult to imagine, so often folks in positions of power like to point to our restaurants, our beaches, our resorts, and say what a wonderful world Rhode Island is, and that we should all simply go out and spend time on Federal Hill at one of our fine restaurants. We should go out to one of our beach clubs. And I like to point out that for most people in this state right now, regardless of your background, regardless of your ethnicity, for most people in this state right now, that's simply not a possibility. That simply they spend most of their time working in the service economy to support those who are using their positions of privilege in the state, particularly in positions of power within the state government itself, to make sure that they've got, that six-figure salary doing God knows what, while at the same time, nothing in this government. All one has to do is look at the schools, and you see how badly they've failed people in the urban core. We're shocked that generations of children aren't able to work or aren't able to accomplish great things when they've got the talents, they've got the work ethic, but simply the schools in this city have failed them miserably. And yet we would make them the criminal element, them the object of police attention, when the true, the individuals who should really being hauled up, if you will, are some of the people who run this city and this state, because they profited personally while listen, the chickens have come home to roost. I've heard you say that.
They're roosting, baby. They're roosting. They're roosting. They're roosting. More than 4 decades of school, destruction or loss in education for our youth. I mean, that are our grandparents now, or their parents, or they're in jail because the educational system failed them. Period. Nobody was watching. Nobody cared. And realistically, I don't think they really care now. They know that people are watching, but realistically, are they going to fix it? Nope. They're going to address some things, but they're not going to fix it. That's just my opinion.
I've only got a couple of minutes left, and I hope you'll join us again soon. I hope you're welcome here anytime. I hope sometime soon that you can actually have a studio environment where people can come and visit us in person. But my sense was that there were people in power at a hearing today, and it doesn't matter who they were, are simply ready to dismiss these concerns to another study group, to another blue ribbon panel, to another conversation, to a discussion. I want you to let people know how tired you are of conversations, blue ribbon panels, discussions. Is it time for that crap to end?
It's ended. It's ended. There's absolutely no room for discussion, for any study of anything. We've been studied, we've been dissected, we've done flipped, we've been rubbed down, and all that. Hundreds and thousands of times. This is time for action. There is a movement, not a moment, a movement that folks are not believing that it's in place. Listen, I have learned in the last week about these secret little plans that have been working for years with resources, Rhode Island taxpayers' dollars. Let them not go ahead and do what they're supposed to do, because my thing will be, I will be challenging. I am not begrudging what the 1%ers have been able to benefit off of. I am here saying it's past due time for them to sit up, back off. They can burp all they want and wait for us to be able to come and fix some of the mess that they have allowed to happen. If they're not ready to do that, guess what? Get ready for what's coming to them that they will be completely deserving of, period. It's on its way. Let them go ahead and play foolish.
I had a young man I met at the rally today. It's interesting. He's an independent journalist. He just spent some time in the Middle East. He's moved back to Rhode Island and just sort of finding a way, if you will, in this. He and other folks sent me an email, and and this is something I'll share with you offline. But if I can, they asked 4 or 5 specific questions. But the concern is that tomorrow, that there will be, let's just say that there's going to be an overreaction by a variety of members of the law enforcement community to what is planned to be, and what by all means should be, a peaceful rally. So the question he had, and a couple of folks wrote this email to me, are you planning to be at the rally? And are legislators like you, who clearly represent the community that's being challenged right now, that's been challenged for so many years by a variety of failures within Rhode Island government, are you willing to put on notice at some level to make sure that law enforcement knows that not only is the whole world watching, but quite frankly, you are? And that there has to be unless violence is brooked by some member, that there has to be a spirit of peace and cooperation tomorrow afternoon.
I think every law enforcement officer, no, let me back up. The majority of law enforcement officer knows that everybody is watching them. Those who are going to be there tomorrow, they're going to be being watched. No question about it, period. At the end of the day, tomorrow's march is a peaceful demonstration. And it's of our youth, white, black, Asian, the whole gamut. It's not a situation that it's just one race. It's a group of frustration and a group that want and need to express their feelings, and they're going to do so. My colleagues, several of them, are going to be there. They're going to be there, and rightfully so. We are their representative, and a lot of us have been dismissing them, and we need to hear what they have to say. I would love, and they would love, for Gina to be there. Of course, if she walked down to her conference the other day with individuals from the state police and local police enforcement and the National Guard just to walk across the lawn, she would have the helicopters and the jump out boys and everybody tomorrow. So I don't expect her to be there, but it would be great. They wouldn't attack her. I think they would appreciate her. But the problem with that, I think, is that she would be listening but not hearing anything they say. She would just be there just to be there, to satisfy them, not to hear what they're saying. And it's time to listen, and it's time to act, period. So it's going to be interesting tomorrow. They're preparing. And everything that I've heard from them today, even just before I came onto this podcast, it is peaceful. They want nothing but peace. Any bootleg stuff that happens tomorrow, it will be independent from this march, this protest, this rally. They are not the ones to planning anything. It'll be another distraction if anything goes wrong, period. And I believe those youngsters today. I believe them.
Representative Anastasia Williams. She is representative for District 9 in the great city of Providence, as we love to call it, the naked city, the city of 1,000 stories. She's been responsible for the biggest one this week. And I want to thank you for joining us. And I hope we get a chance to meet this weekend or sometime in the next week or two. I'd love to have a cup of coffee with you and just kind of break bread. But in the meantime, I want you to know that you and the community that you represent are welcome on this show anytime you feel like you need to vent or bring up any one of these points in the progress that's being made, or, well, God forbid, the progress that's not being made. It's you're right. It's time that the platitudes have got to end. The cliches have got to go home. It's simply time to act. A line was crossed this past week with the assassination of a citizen by a law enforcement officer, and I use the word assassination intentionally. It's supposed to be provocative. Somehow we've gotten conditioned to the term murder or arrest or homicide. I think the term assassination, in my personal opinion, is much more appropriate. But I wish you nothing but luck this weekend, and I'll be optimistic. I think good things are to come. I think everyone now, every time they watch that video, understands that this has gone on for far too long, and if the resolution of it seems dramatic, if it means changing our opinions and our, if you will, approaches to certain governmental presences, certain pillars of the community, oh well.
Mm-hmm.
Got to happen. Thank you for joining us tonight.
I thank you, Pat, for having me. Greatly appreciate.
All right, we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Yes, I look forward to it.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break now. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, as always. Outrage, porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network here at coalitionradionetwork.com, high in the hills above La Prave, the naked city, the city of so many stories. And so many of them are being heard this week. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And, of course, CoalitionRadioNetwork.com, or our old site, CoalitionRadio.us. I've got interviews with all sorts of people that we're going to be starting to port over to CoalitionRadioNetwork.com. We're going to take a very quick break. We're running late, but to me it was critically important to talk to Representative Williams in light of what happened today and in light of what's going to happen this weekend in Providence. Stay tuned. We're going to have Golf News RI, two dudes talking about golf, and a special guest in just a moment.